Hello, everybody. My name is John Egan. I'm the head of demand internationally for Mopub, based in Dublin, Ireland. So thanks for spending some time with me today. Mopub is a mobile-only supply-side platform. We were acquired by Twitter in 2013, and we are 100% focused on mobile in-app inventory. So the opportunity to talk about mobile gaming specifically and how that can work for brands in programmatic is something that's very near and dear to our hearts. So thanks for making the time for us today. Now, one of the reasons we have always focused on in-app only is because in the mobile environment, it essentially offered the best user experience. And we thought that way back in 2010 when we were building the company, that anything that enabled the best user experience would also offer the best foundation for business growth and eventually the best foundation for advertising as well. And thankfully, that has proven to be true. Some of our stats are seen here. As I mentioned, we're owned by Twitter currently. We have about 1.5 billion unique devices that are live through the platform, which are all connected through this network of 45,000 different applications that use Mopub to power their ad strategy. And we do offer a programmatic exchange as one of the monetization methods for those developers. And those are connected to about 180 different demand side platforms or DSPs that are actively investing in programmatic. So with all this inventory, there's also a really substantial reach to an audience. So we have about 450 million daily active users, which can go up and down depending on the time of year. As you can see, a fairly even gender split, skews slightly female, and then quite a wide range of audiences. As you could imagine, it does skew just a slight bit younger, which I think is just kind of the nature of digital offerings, especially something that's kind of on the cutting edge like in-app. Now, to get more specific about the inventory, what we say is that if you want to do anything in mobile effectively, mobile gaming has to be on that media plan. And it's really quite surprising to us how much pushback there is, especially at the brand level and particularly from some of the more traditional agencies about mobile gaming. And that's kind of what we're going to really get into today. But as you can see here, we talked about all this reach and all these devices and this significant audience. More than half of the inventory that's on our platform comes from gaming. Everything else is a real kind of scatter of different verticals. There's messaging, there's dating, there's social networking, there's utilities. There's a lot of different stuff that makes up that 47%. But the single largest pool of inventory from one vertical is gaming on our platform. So gaming has to be on the media plan if you're going to use mobile correctly. And there's a handful of reasons for that beyond just reach. First off, it's this absolutely enormous channel. In terms of the number of people that you can reach globally on gaming in general, it's absolutely enormous. It's roughly 1/3 of the world's population can be reached through gaming at any given time. But more important than just kind of like the sheer quantity of people is also the quantity of time. This is a very enthusiastic audience who is happily spending significant amounts of time on this content on a daily basis. As you can see here, pretty significant numbers of people spending an hour. And then mobile gaming in particular, as a subset of gaming holistically, is quite important because it actually accounts for the majority of spending in gaming. And I think this was, when I first read this, I was actually a little surprised by it. Like you think console or even PC gaming, which, these big rigs and lots of, fairly material investments to get the most out of that experience. All of those are still dwarfed by the amount of money that's spent in app. So mobile gaming accounts for almost half of all gaming spend. And what's particularly interesting about that is even though there's a ton of money being spent in this channel, it can happily coexist with advertising, which matters a lot to brands. Mobile gamers are very happy when ads are done well and it can be additive to the content. That balance can exist. And that's what we're going to show some examples of here shortly. And then lastly, for the moment, still 100% of mobile gaming, that happens in app. Like you can't do it particularly well in browser. So all of this spend, all of this time spent, all of that reach, if you want to be in mobile gaming, you got to do it in-app. So that's why we're really advocating for in-app as a place that's worthy of inclusion on a media plan. The other critical thing from a branding perspective is that gaming and video go hand in hand. Video is just kind of a core part of the gaming experience in-app to begin with. If you think about the tutorial when you launch a new game, it's usually a video showing you how the thing works. If you think about the ads trying to entice people to download the game in the first place, video ads are extremely common. So users and developers, the whole content creation community is essentially used to having video and video ads as part and parcel of that content experience. So there's an enormous amount of daily active users that you can reach through the mobile video channel in gaming, loads of impressions, and a lot of it can be configured to be non-skippable. So mobile gaming, great way to reach a ton of people, and it's a really powerful vehicle for video advertising. Now, to really break it down to like a media buyer's perspective, like a lot of stats, a lot of kind of intuitive stuff that you've maybe heard before. The easy way to think about it is the core benefit here is you get extremely performant video inventory. What we see on our platform is 4-cent cost per completed view. And that's, for a 30-second spot, it's fully measurable. It's the only thing on the screen. So, we go to agencies and we say like, look, you're complaining about, struggling to find video inventory that's measurable and it achieves this performance threshold. Like, you literally have an option under your nose and you're not buying it. And that's ultimately why I joined this, was to talk about that and hope to correct it. So in a lot of cases, when we go and sit down with people who are running media buying teams or trying to figure out what a media plan might be, there's very little pushback on the stuff that I just went through. Like, it is intuitive that mobile is a good potential vehicle for reaching a lot of people. There's very little disbelief that gaming in particular has a very large, happily engaged audience. Like, there's not a lot of objection to those things. But even so, there's still a massive underinvestment in this channel versus the time spent, the engagement, and the advertising opportunities that it presents. And we keep asking, like, why? Why is this? And I think, for me, this is really kind of the meat of this talk and this conversation, and hopefully the crux of the opportunity is to address some of these things that prevent investment in a channel that otherwise makes a ton of sense. So the kind of stuff that we've heard is you can't measure mobile in-app. This is just flat out not true. I think it may have been true like 2 years ago, but it kind of has one of those, it's like a legacy truth that has become an operating procedure that isn't challenged enough. And the reality is that the open measurement SDK is something that almost every major programmatic platform like us has integrated and supports. We've gotten it out to our developers. They have pushed it into their app and driven downloads of those apps. So for us now, 85% of our inventory is measurable per IAS, double verified, Moat, whoever that might be. And you can run campaigns, and we've seen advertisers like a CPG advertiser here who had a campaign requirement of 80% viewability as per integral ad science. And it was very easy to set a campaign up and run it, and it was 84% when the campaign was over. They came back and said, hey, you're in the top 3 of our partners across all the channels. Great, let's do another one. So this idea that you can't measure in-app is flat out wrong. Like, that should not be on anybody's mind anymore. That just isn't true. We also hear this one a lot. You can't run VPaid in app. And the reality here is that VPaid is a deprecated protocol. This is like, nobody should be running it anywhere. And this is another one of these kind of legacy things that it played a really critical role a couple of years ago, because it was a means to enable measurement across lots of different video players. And that has been made obsolete, particularly by the open measurement protocol, the OM SDK that I just mentioned. And for us, what we push is essentially say, like, look, if measurement is what matters, and that's why you've been running in VPaid, it's time to turn it over to VAST, which enables the same amount of measurability that's needed. all the interactivity, completion rates, all of that stuff can be captured. So saying you can't run vPaid in app, you shouldn't be running vPaid at all because it's deprecated. And now we're moving past VAST to this new thing called Shark, which is something that we're working on at the moment. Again, another example, a retail advertiser said, look, I want to run this video campaign, 70% or better completion rate is what matters to me. We helped them configure it to run fast, 80% completion rate when the campaign was done. No problem. The last one, and this one's kind of the more nuanced, I would say, of the bunch, is we hear this one a lot, that mobile in-app is low quality content. And to this one, I would say that it's a lot like desktop inventory in that there is a spectrum out there. You can go on desktop and find slideshows all day long if you wanted to. So there's kind of a range, and what matters is finding a group of content or a set of apps or a pool of inventory that's acceptable for you and your advertisers' brand safety thresholds. And what's interesting with in-app and what makes it a little bit challenging is there is a lot more turnover in the app stores. What's the top of the charts today probably won't be next month. And that dynamism, like the fact that there are new ones coming and going, that's quite a bit different than a relatively static ComScore top 100, which can guide desktop landing. So our approach to that is to literally leverage the editorial tools from the app stores, like downloads, rankings, content verticals, the ratings that are applied to types of content, whether it's for a mature audience or a younger audience. All of those can be pretty powerful levers for inventory curation. And what we will do is we'll essentially help a brand or an agency sift through this universe of apps, which can look a little daunting, and figure out something that makes sense for them. So we had another retail advertiser who essentially said, look, we have really strict brand safety guidelines. They walked us through kind of what that meant. And what we did was essentially apply a couple of different filters, like app category, so we could remove entire verticals that represented some brand safety risk. We also applied the content ratings, the download information, and some user feedback in terms of like stars and stuff like that, to basically say, like, here is a very, very small pool. In this case, it was only 59 apps that we think will align with the definition that you've given us. They took that back to the advertiser. It was approved. It ran. The campaign worked great. And this was running in Northern Europe, if I remember correctly. And even with only 59 apps, it was still a large enough pool of users to be able to deliver the campaign on time. So pretty good story here. And this is really kind of the stuff that a mobile SSP is uniquely qualified to do, is to help dig in, figure out what makes sense, what doesn't, and argue for what could and couldn't be considered brand safe. And in particular, mobile gaming really fits nicely into this. There's very little risque content inside of a puzzle game or something like that. It's just, it is what it is. And you're not going to have this injection of like news or social or some kind of weird dating thing that pops up. So it's a pretty safe place to invest. So again, mobile gaming, great vehicle for reaching a lot of people, very powerful vehicle for video inventory in particular, all of which is measurable, viewable, and you can configure it to define what is brand safe for you. So these objections can be worked around, and there are solutions for those. And in a couple cases, they're just flat out wrong. So let's talk a little bit about the ad formats, like what to actually, if you're comfortable with where I'm going with this, like, okay, what would I actually invest in? So there's two really key formats on the video side that go hand in hand with gaming inventory. The first that I want to talk about is rewarded video. So rewarded video is almost unique to mobile in-app. And the whole idea is that it is user initiated. There's going to come a point in the content experience where the user is presented with a choice to watch an ad for some piece of content that aids their experience or not. And the example here, I think this one is a messaging one, but you can use it for just about anything, where you're progressing through the app. In this case, I think it's a dating structure is how we drew this one up, where you get to message people inside the dating app. And there's a limit on how many you can send each day. And when you reach that limit, that's when you're presented with this choice. Would you like to watch an ad to continue or not? And if you say yes, then that's when this 30-second ad pops up. It's the only thing on the screen. The user happily will sit and watch the entire 30 seconds because they're getting something of value. And if they choose not to do that, that's fine. They can go and pay for messages or move on to in-app purchases or subscribe or whatever. There's lots of different ways that this advertising vehicle works in parallel with in-app purchases, which is why developers like it. So the reason that this works so well is, again, that dynamic of the user asking to view an ad because they're getting something back that matters to them. And in a gaming environment, that could be, a life, a hint, a boost, like who knows, some kind of power up. There's lots of ways that you can configure this. And because they have asked to view it, the completion rates on these video ads are organically very high. What we see is about 95% for these 30-second spots because of that value exchange between user and advertiser. And that is a pretty powerful dynamic. And the good news is not only does it work well, but it's also enjoyed by users. There's a lot of information out there. There's some links down at the bottom. Facebook study, Ad Colony, eMarketer, a lot of different places have consistently found that users agree that this type of format where they're getting something in exchange for giving their attention to an advertiser is a net positive. Like they're happy with that exchange. And for brands, what always kind of shocks me is you have this highly performant ad space. Like this is one of the most powerful vehicles for getting users to download new apps. And when we talk to agencies, sometimes they say, oh, well, I've heard that this is for performance only. And it's like the idea of like plugging into something that performs well could somehow be a negative. I don't understand that. Like this does work well. It does drive completions of views. And it has been proven to effectively put something in front of someone in a way that at least gets them to think about it, pay attention to it, and consider it. Like there's no way that that's a net negative. And then finally, from a pure media buying perspective, it's viewable, it's measurable, and it's something that can fit into any programmatic investment. So in terms of like, kind of what it looks like and how much there is, we have a significant amount of this traffic on our platform. As you can see, the cost per completed view here is very inexpensive in my view. These are US CPMs, so that can change depending on what market that you're in. But if you are an advertiser that are looking for maximum completion rates and lowest cost per completed view, this is the right way to do it. And in a gaming example here, this is one of these color by number apps. You ask for an ad. Sorry, I let her talk.
Automatically finds discounts for train tickets along certain journeys by breaking down the journeys into separate tickets. If I was to go from Cardiff to Manchester now, I would be saving £18. Go check it out and start saving money, people.
So there we go. In that case, the user clicked the hint button, and that's where the ad showed up. So good example. Interstitial video is the other key ad format. This one's quite a bit simpler. It's really analogous to mid-roll or pre-roll or something like that. In this example, the user is in a music app. They've played 5 songs. You could, if it was gaming, it would be five levels or something like that. And then there's just quite simply an ad break, and that is in a pause point in the content experience where the ad shows up, the user watches it, and then they can move on to continuing down their content. This one's a little bit easier to configure. You can put it in more types of apps. It's not linked to the in-app economy in any way. So you can basically put it in more places, and there's a greater amount of scale. Just like the rewarded video, this is measurable and all the rest. The cost per completed view on this is slightly higher because there are skip and non-skip options, and because the user isn't incentivized to watch the entire video. So there you can see that difference here. The plus side is it's a little bit less expensive from a CPM standpoint. So in a music example like this, the song plays, the ad will pop up. I think this is a TurboTax one. And then when the ad is done, the user can carry on and continue watching, listening to their music.
Guaranteed. Get the app now.
So the last thing here before I wrap up is just to note that ton of scale, ton of reach through gaming inventory, a great vehicle for video advertising. And then it's also completely applicable to intelligent and new audience targeting. And this actually plays a pretty key role on the Twitter side of things, where what we do is we will look through the social signals that we get on the Twitter side, and then look for pockets of inventory where those same users can be found. So it might be something like, I don't know, new parents, somebody who's like interested in consumer technology, or somebody who's like actively tweeting about fantasy football, any one of those things. And what we find consistently is that our gaming inventory always falls into those buckets of where these different audiences congregate. So what we're doing is we're applying these social targeting signals and then making that available as a programmatic offering. And then you run the campaign on wherever apps these users tend to congregate. And mobile gaming always falls into that category. The mix of which apps can vary, but gaming as a vertical is there 100% of the time. So if I could leave you with a couple things. Mobile gaming, it offers you an enormous reach to a wide range of valuable audiences. Gaming and video go hand in hand. Rewarded video, it's really unique to mobile in-app, it's highly performant, and it's totally underutilized. It's just something that everyone needs to change that, because it's measurable, it's viewable, and it offers loads of filtering options for brand safety. And if you remember nothing else, just remember 4-cent cost per completed views are available through this channel, all of which is a good reason to invest more in mobile gaming specifically. So I ran a little bit over, I apologize for that, but I'm happy to stay on here and answer any questions if they pop up. And thanks for giving me a little bit of your time today. Okay, sure, no problem. Sorry, I'm just pulling up the link here. We have one question. I'm allowed to answer one question is what I'm told, which I can't see. Will the change in IDFA regulations affect how accurate or effective programmatic is in mobile games? That's a terrific question. I think it's definitely going to have an impact in how success is measured, but I remain convinced that mobile gaming holistically is going to be an effective channel. I think the nuance of like how precise your audience match can be, or how much reach to a specific target audience you can get, that obviously does get a little bit more difficult if you have less devices to match against. But from what I see, there's just such a massive underinvestment in mobile gaming to begin with, that I think all these changes are actually kind of a net positive. In a lot of ways, it's a channel that, for all these reasons that I walked through, has not gotten a lot of investment from brand advertisers. So I think it's actually a pretty viable and interesting place to look at from a reallocation standpoint, if you're finding other places to be like increasingly challenging because of cookie matching or device matching or whatever that might be. Like, this is an area where there's less competition for the inventory, which I think makes it a viable and interesting option as these changes take place.